Good morning, everybody.
Good morning.
My name is Kristen Lomas. I'm with SOFA, the Society for Financial Awareness, and we are a 501c3 corp, and our sole mission is just to get out in the community and empower individuals to take control of their finances. So today we have the wonderful opportunity of having Jim Black, who is a financial planner. SOFA does a really good due diligence job of going out and finding experts in the field to give presentations on 30 plus topics on financial education. So today he's going to be presenting on strategies for a sustainable income in retirement. Jim has over 30 years of experience in the financial world. He's actually written and authored a book called Happily Ever After, Retirement Doesn't Have to Be Just a Fairy Tale. So I do have a few copies of the book if anyone wants to grab one of these before you leave. And then the other wonderful benefit that Jim provides, because he does give his time pro bono in the community, we found that many times during our Q&A at the end of workshops, people are a little hesitant to raise their hand and ask personal questions in front of their coworkers. So he has agreed that he will meet one-on-one with anyone who wants to get resources or tools for their own specific situation. So keep that in mind. That is available to you as well. So we'll get started. I'd like to introduce Jim Black.
All right, so let's talk about it. So we're going to talk about how do you survive. You work every day, you go to work, you get your paycheck, you pay your bills, and that continues for some number of years. It could be 20 years, it could be 40 years, it could be 30, who knows how many years that's going to be. But at some point you're going to get the last paycheck you're ever going to get for the rest of your life. And now in your situation, how old are you?
22.
22, okay. That's a lot of years. That's a lot of years for you. Unless you hit the lottery or something. But so the reality is what we're going to talk about is kind of what's changing. We're going to talk about how do you make sure that once you get that last paycheck you're ever going to get for the rest of your life, that you can continue to live the life you've always dreamed. Whether it's traveling or doing whatever you want to do with your time other than being here. Okay? Let's see how we do here. I watched that hundreds of times. It makes me laugh every time. So it's either the reminder to silence your phones or make sure you got them, or determine one of those unexpected expenses out there that you haven't thought about. They're going to change your life in retirement. So as far as the SOFA event, the SOFA does they have an evaluation form that they need, or they'd like to have you fill out, basically, that just talks about kind of the event that we talked about today. And you get to say what you liked or didn't like about what I happened to say as well. But that goes back to Kristen. I think that we collected that stuff. We're doing that at the end. All right. So we're going to talk about is kind of dealing with this. Is kind of think of this as a big picture slide. We're going to talk about longevity. You're going to live longer than you think. There's a couple of different things that we'll talk about on that side as to what's happening out there. And it's really, on the one hand, it's very exciting. It's very cool. In fact, I will give you a precursor to that. I have done a number of things with the NFL, with NFL players over the course of the last 7 years. And I was at an event, the NFL sponsored this event for players. It was at Soldier Field. And so I was at Soldier Field in Chicago. Anybody been to Soldier Field? Okay. Kind of a rickety old stadium. You can hear it kind of whistles when the wind blows. It's kind of, anyway, so there was a billboard at Soldier Field. And I bet the billboard was, it had to be 40 yards wide. I mean, it was enormous. And it was a Prudential ad that they put on there. And all of the billboard said was, the first person on earth who will live to be 150 years old has already been born. Think about that one for a second. I'm sure there's some research that goes behind that, but the reality is life expectancy is increasing. So for this young man over here at 22, you might be our next guy who lives to be 150. So you got 130 years of retirement between now and then. So inflation, prices are going to go up. How do you make sure? Because when you get off the inflation bus, or when you get off the work bus, inflation is going to continue to rise. Medicaid long-term care expenses is something you need to have a conversation about, although there are some things you can do about it. Social Security is out there, and if you're hearing the news, there's some changes coming up with Social Security. And of course, the market. If you're taking income from the market, there's a risk element that you need to be sure that you take into account. All right, so get this number. So an increase of 2 years per decade. Now, they're saying now, I just saw some new research that came out about 2 weeks ago that said for every, let's see if I can say this right, for every 3 years, you get an extra 6 months of life. Okay, think about that. So if a child is born today, they're going to live to whatever that age bracket is. A child that's born, say, a year from now, or excuse me, 3 years from now, is going to live 6 months longer. And 6 months longer, and 6 months longer. And it's pretty spectacular when you start looking at life expectancy. I had an opportunity to go to a conference, a tech conference, down in Florida, and this guy who spoke was a futurologist. You ever heard of a futurologist? Okay, you've heard of it. Okay, maybe it's out of my generation. I expected somebody to be up there with a palm, you know, one of those balls, or palms, or the crystal ball. Anyway, but so instead, his first slide out, he's got this computer. And some people in this room may have seen these computers. There was the one with the tape that goes, you know, and it had one floor above and one floor below just to keep it cool. And so he shows a picture of that. And then he shows the picture of this little teeny thing sitting next to a grain of rice. And he said, that is a functioning computer. And to show how functioning it is, he starts typing on the table. And you see this screen where words are coming up. And if you look at it, let's say he's just hitting his fingers just like this. But when you look at the view from above, the TV was shooting down this red laser. It looked like a keyboard on the table. But anyway, the concept is that the computer is now smaller than a grain of rice. That computer at your desk, you're wasting your space. I mean, literally, a grain of rice. I mean, it's spectacular. And so he was also saying that they have now found the cure for cancer. And I went, what? All of a sudden, I sat in my chair and he said, so remember years ago they started doing this, they were looking at the DNA strands, and they were trying to map the DNA strands. The first strand took them 18 years. The second strand took them 18 months. They said within 10 years it's going to be an instant test. And so what that means is, he said they've isolated and 3 different strands, 3 different types of cancers: prostate cancer, liver cancer, and I'm forgetting the third. But basically, they've already identified the problem where it is in the gene, and now they're just fixing it. Once they fix it, that cancer will be eliminated forever. I mean, it's spectacular. In fact, he said if you live 10 years, if you can live 10 years longer, you will never die of cancer again. Wow. Okay, talk about life expectancy. You've got some serious things to look at. You know, when you look at the old numbers, this is if you make it to the age of 65. So somebody who's 65 right now has a 14% chance of making to 94. If you are married with a spouse, one of you, there is a 95% chance that one of you will live to age 90. And that's a rounding here. So if you're married at 65, one of you, at least one, is going to make it to 90. Okay? Now, the other problem of getting older is what? Expenses continue to rise. Regardless of whatever happens out there, we have had a couple of times in history, and I mean limited to months, not years, where we've had what's called deflation, okay? Where costs have actually gone down. In fact, we had one place in the 1970s, it was called stagflation. Remember that one? Well, some of you don't remember. Trust me on this one. There was a time when prices were going down, but interest rates were going up. And when we were coming in, remember the oil crisis? How many people remember sitting there every other day, odd license plate, getting gasoline? Yeah. So, the reality is, if you, 30 years from now, think of something, what costs $10 today? Give me an item that costs $10.
I should put the caveat, I was a teenager.
I assume you were sitting in a car seat at that point.
Yeah.
So what costs $10 now? What do you think that costs $10?
Hamburger at a restaurant.
Okay, a hamburger at a restaurant. So in 30 years, that same cost, if you're multiplying it out, is going to be about $25. Just to get an idea of that same kind of. Think about a car. What's a car right now? 30,000, 40,000. I mean, what's a multiply that? Can you imagine paying $100,000 for a car, for just your standard transporting car? So, but the thing is, if your income is still the same as it was 30 years ago, you have a problem. Okay. The other thing you need to take a look at is what's called long-term care. Now, long-term care simply means if you get to a point where you're unable to take care of yourself, you can't go to a hospital, right? The hospital will only take you if you've got a broken arm, broken this, liver, whatever it is, okay? But if you get to a point where you're needing some assistance, you have to get private care, okay? Now, long-term care is not covered by Medicare, okay? Medicare is as soon as you turn 65, you guys probably nobody in here knows about this yet, but when you turn 65, you're going to have to go out and you apply for Medicare. Medicare is federal government insurance for medical, okay? And it covers a lot of things, and it's not terrible, okay? But none of these things are covered on Medicare. So this is another expense that you're not paying today that potentially you may end up paying down the road. All right? Social Security. Okay, now, by the way, I'm going to show you the bright side of this on the other side, okay? I just want you to kind of get a sense of what's happening. Because the reality is, none of us really see where we're going. We basically live day to day and kind of go down the road. And a lot of these things you won't experience until you hit this point. But somebody's experiencing it today. And so there's things happening. So Social Security, everybody knows what this is, right? Social Security was established to create a buffer. Basically, it was set up significantly, or it was set up initially for the poor, for those who had no retirement benefits, no way to maintain their lifestyle. And so what's interesting, when Social Security was first enacted or created, it started with you being able to collect Social Security at age 65, and stayed that way for over 50 years. Okay, but you know what's interesting? How many people have heard this? You know what life expectancy was in the 30s when they started Social Security? 64. So life expectancy was 64. You didn't start collecting until 65. So to put that in today's terms, if they had increased the day that you can apply for Social Security and connected it with life expectancy, you wouldn't be able to start drawing Social Security until you were age 85 today, or 86. Okay, that's current life expectancy. If you're a woman, life expectancy is age 87. If you're a man, it's 85. So if you think about that, now it's basically 67. So it's gone up a couple of years, but not a ton. So the problem is they're saying, hey, we've got more people who are going to be drawing on Social Security than are going to pay into Social Security. Okay, is that a problem? Well, according to Social Security, it's going to be in the year 2039. They will be broke. They won't have any money left. Okay. Now, that's the fact, but let me assure you, in my mind, I do not believe for 1 second, and I've been watching this story unfold for 25 years, I don't believe for 1 second that they will allow Social Security to lapse. There's two things. I actually just read. The Social Security comes out with a report every year. It was probably north of 500 pages. I read it over the summer. Talk about a boring read. Oh my gosh. Okay? But what they said is they already have the solution of how to fix it. But they don't have the political willpower to step up. So there's two things that they said if they did these two things, that they could press it out without making any other changes to 2072. Which is, I would think, past most of our life expectancies. Maybe not. Maybe not everybody. Okay? But all they would do is, number one, eliminate the increase in Social Security. Right now, they have a standard of living increase or inflation increase that they build in. We're one of the few countries in the world that still have that. Most is a flat number. And I think what's the increase next year? Is it 3.8%?
That's 2.9.
2.9%. Okay. 2.8. Okay, so they're saying that they're going to increase it 2.8. Now, the reality is they won't, but that's a whole other story. I won't confuse you guys with. Okay? And so the one idea was to eliminate that. The second one is right now, you only pay Social Security, and I think it's a slide on this one, up to, see this is a little dated. It says that for the first, what the slide says is the first $118,000 that you make, they withhold Social Security tax. If you make more than $118,000, they don't hold Social Security tax. Okay? Now, I actually believe that number is $128,000 for this year. It's been increased from the last couple of years. Okay? So basically what's happening, you don't know this, probably, most people don't pay attention, but your employer is paying half of your Social Security expense right now. So the employer pays half and you pay half. Okay? So when you see that FICA, you see that stuff on there, you're going, who the heck is FICA and why is he taking so much of my money? It's these guys. All right? So Social Security is basically set up to allow you to get a floor of income. So when you retire, you're going to get a minimum floor. Okay? That floor depends upon how much you contribute to Social Security over your lifetime. The reality is you only need 10 good years. If you have 10 years where you made over, at this point, I mean, if you're looking at 118,000, over that number, you're going to get the max Social Security benefit out there possible. You could go live on a beach somewhere for the rest of it, and when it's come time to collect Social Security, you're going to get the highest point in whatever that number is. Okay? Now, the trick right now, though, Social Security, the highest you can get right now, if you wait all the way till 70, is just around a little more than $40,000. Okay? So it's something right now, and the average Social Security, by the way, right now is only $22,000. That's the average that's being paid out today. So think about your lifestyle and what you're doing. How much of your income could be covered by Social Security? Okay, piece, right? But how much, depending on what you're spending. If you're spending $50,000, hey, it covers half of it. So you can kind of expect that to increase. If you're spending $100,000, you're talking about 20%. It's not going to be as beneficial, probably. You're not going to see as much of a hit. Okay. All right. Now there are ways that you can apply for Social Security earlier, and I'm just going to throw these out just so you know that they're there. The most important thing is, if you have contributed to the Social Security system for at least 40 quarters, which is 10 years, you're eligible for a benefit. You may not get the top benefit, but you're going to get a benefit. So what that means is, if you're married and your spouse dies, potentially you get a Social Security benefit. You used to be able to get it from the day your spouse died until you switched to your own benefit in your 60s. They've now changed that to widow's benefits do not start until age 60. So if the spouse passed away before 60, you still have to wait till 60. Children of that spouse can also receive it. I'm dealing with a situation right now where I have a friend who's 40 years old who passed away on Tuesday of last week. 40 years old, which is devastating, right? He's the father of 6 children, ranging between the ages of 2 and 16. So, in that scenario, although his wife will not be able to get widow's benefits, each of the children up until age 18 will receive some portion of Social Security benefits. Okay? Yeah. Let's see. You can start drawing right now. Anybody who was born after 1960, you're at age 67. Doesn't matter. It's what's called your FRA, your full retirement age. Okay? If you decide to pull Social Security benefits, you can pull them as early as 62, but if you make any money, they're not going to give it to you. Here's the kicker. So let's say you're 62 years old and you're saying, hey, I want to supplement my income with some Social Security. I'm going to apply for my Social Security at 62, but you're still working here. If you make more than $14,400, you blew it. Because you applied for Social Security, they're not going to give it to you. They're going to say, sorry, you make too much money, you don't get Social Security. $14,400 is the cutoff for an individual, which is crazy, but that's the way they've got it set up. Okay? What's interesting here, this last statistic, by the age of 66, 93.3% of all benefits that could be collected are being collected. What that means is most people actually start taking their Social Security benefits at age 62. Now, there's an advantage and a disadvantage. Think about this. The earlier you take free money from the government, the longer you're going to get it, right? The math works. So if you take it at 62 and you live to 100, you're going to get it longer than if you waited to age 70 and lived to 100. But the difference is, if you take income from Social Security before 70, you're going to get a smaller number. It's not going to be as much money. Okay? So there's a trade-off. It's math. And what I'm going to show you, I want to save time at the end. I'm actually going to show you how Social Security fits into everything else. Because the reality is, once you get that last paycheck, it's making sure that regardless of what happens, you have the income to maintain your lifestyle, whatever that is, wherever that is. I'm actually working on another book right now, It's called Retire on Any Income. Okay? And what I'm looking at are different places around the world where you can retire on significantly less than you lived here, than you had here. In fact, I have a client right now, as soon as we finish the planning process, they are moving to Thailand. Okay? And his wife is actually from the Philippines. He's actually from Bellevue. But they're going to move to Thailand because what they discovered is the cost of living in Thailand is about 20% of the cost of the same cost in the U.S. So if you're spending $10,000 a month to maintain your lifestyle in Bellevue, you can maintain the same lifestyle in Thailand for $2,000. So what he's looking at is he's found a place. Found a place on the beach. There's a company that he's using that's going to find him a driver, a cook, someone to clean the house, and there was something else, and I can't remember what it was. And all in is going to be about $2,200. So a place on the beach in Thailand, which has got some beautiful beaches. Okay? So again, it depends on how you want to do it and where you want to spend. But what we're going to talk about is I will show you actually how you can figure out what your life can look like and what's possible. Okay? So just to take just another minute on Social Security, I'm going to move on from there, this is just to give you an example, because I just want you to kind of have a sense of it. If you were to retire at age 62, and this, I think the table actually, now that I look at it, is a little bit more confusing, but if you retire at age 62, okay, this is a couple, Dana and David. Okay, if you retire at 62, she's going to get $750 a month, he's going to get $1,500 a month. That's all they're ever going to get for the rest of their lives. Okay? If they were to wait until 66, her benefit increases to $1,000, his increases to $2,000. You see how this works? If they wait all the way till 70, she's going to get $1,300 a month or $2,600 if he passes away. Because if there's one spouse passes away, the surviving spouse gets to take over the bigger number. Okay? So she's going to get $1,300 a month until he passes away, and then she gets his $2,600, assuming he lives longer. So if you look at this, you go, well, at 62, I'm going to get $750. But if I wait, I'm going to get almost double if I wait till 70. So that's the incentive that the Social Security is creating to encourage you to wait. But the reality is, most people look at this and go, hey, I think Social Security is going to go broke, so I'm going to take my money while I can. Or, I think I'm going to die early, I'm going to take my money while I can. Okay? Which are both reasonable. And who knows what's going to happen with anybody's life. But the numbers, if you look back what we were talking about before, are going to be longer. But your life expectancy is better than you think it is. Okay? Which is actually good news. I mean, really. All right. So there are things when you start talking about Social Security, and I didn't want to spend quite as much time on Social Security as I am. So I'm just going to give you kind of an overview on this and just kind of let Social Security go. And that is, the benefit to Social Security is it's free money, so you're going to get it. It will be there when you retire. I'm 100% confident. I would take that bet with anybody. Okay, so go ahead and build Social Security into your plan, but the trick is knowing how it works. And the tough part is Social Security changes the rules constantly. Constantly. And so there's no way to know what the rules are going to be until you apply for them. But it's one of those things where you need to do some research. You need to find somebody when the time comes. If you call up the Social Security Administration, they're going to say, I'm sorry, I'm not allowed to give you advice. And the reality is you don't want their advice anyway, because when they hire somebody to work at the Social Security Administration, they have a half a day's training. The half a day's training is how to run the computer. Okay? Because what happens is their computer screen has a bunch of questions on it. And if they click on the question that you ask, they're going to give you the right answer. But if they click on the wrong question, they're going to give you the wrong answer. You can call Social Security right now just for kicks. You call up 3 times, I'm going to guarantee you at least 2 different answers. Maybe 3. Okay? And so that's the tough part in trying to figure all those pieces out. Now, they do have a website, which is not terrible. The website is probably more educational for you. All right. Let's go skip it. question. My friend has clarified here. All right. So that's what you got. That's the expectation for life expectancy. I don't believe that's going to be the expectation for life expectancy going forward. Things have changed pretty dramatically and will continue to change. One of the things that's interesting, though, is what's happening with tax rates. How many people believe taxes are going down from here? How many people think that we're at a high tax rate and taxes are going down? No takers. How many people think taxes are going up? Okay. All right. So what I'm showing, what I want you to look at right here, this is actually a tax chart. This actually represents income taxes in this country going back to when they started in 1929. Okay? You'll notice income taxes at one point were up to 94%. 94% of your adjusted gross income was taxable. I mean, 94% of your gross income was taxable. Okay? That was back coming off of the Korean War. Okay? Or excuse me, Vietnam War first, then Korean down here. Okay? So it went down for a ways, then we had another war, it went down a little bit more. In fact, you know what's interesting? This big drop, do you know who was president when that happened?
Reagan.
Ronald Reagan, that's exactly right. So you know what's interesting about this? This is totally off the subject, but I thought it was fascinating. So I read the biography of Ronald Reagan. You know Ronald Reagan was a movie star in the 50s, right? Ronald Reagan made $100,000 a picture. That's how much he made back in the 1950s. Pretty good paycheck, right? But what happened was, when taxes were 94%, he found that if he made more than 2 movies, he ended up losing money because he had to pay his agent and everybody else in on taxes. So that top bracket, that 94%, started at $200,000. So there is no year after the first year where Ronald Reagan made more than 2 movies in 1 year, simply because he didn't want to pay the taxes. And so when he became president, he remembered that and changed it. Created the lowest tax that we've ever had since the beginning, all the way back here. Okay? So if you look at this chart, the average on there is actually 54%. Okay? So those who said that, hey, I think taxes are going to go up, were probably right. We are lower than that today. The taxes that we're paying lower, especially with the new kick-out that we've got this year, which I want to spend a few minutes talking about, even though it's a little different than what's happening. That's where we're at. So you got to make sure that it's got to be part of your pay. Okay? All right. All right, so actually I'm going to go back to that because I want to talk about, so there's a couple of things about the current tax law. So you know that there's a new tax law this year. Taxes are different this year than they were last year. Okay? So the first thing that's different is they eliminated the personal exemption. So you had a personal exemption, it's gone. But what he did instead was they doubled your standard deduction. Okay? And so the standard deduction now is $24,000. Okay? But what also happened is if you own a house in this area, the likelihood is your property tax bill is more than $10,000 a year. If your property tax bill is more than $10,000 a year, tough. The answer is tough. You can only write off up to $10,000 a year on your property taxes. Okay? State and local taxes, it's a limit of $10,000. Okay? The other thing is now, if you buy a new house, you only get to write off the interest if the house is less than $750,000. Okay? So, now, just for those who, in this area, $750,000 doesn't buy what it used to buy. Okay? So a $750,000 house, if you pay $800,000 for the house, you still get to write off all of the interest up to $750,000. It's only the additional interest over $750,000 that you can't write off. Okay? Some people think that, oh my gosh, I bought this house, I don't get any of the interest right off. That's not the case. Okay? All right, the other thing is there's what's called a sunset provision in here. The sunset provision simply says that in 2026, it all goes back to the way it was. So this is a temporary tax change. Okay? The other thing is the tax brackets change. Now, this is the best news for most people, is your tax brackets, your percentages were lowered, and the brackets were expanded. What that means is if you made the same amount of money this year as you made last year, you should expect, meaning assuming all things being equal, about a $6,000 tax reduction as an individual. Okay? So somewhere between there, you'll see 2 to 6, kind of what's in there. I don't imagine. I suppose somebody who wasn't paying taxes is not going to see a tax benefit from this. But if you're paying taxes, expect you're going to see a little bit of a bump. Okay. The other thing I want to talk about, we have a stock market. Okay. Who's excited about the stock market right now? We should be ecstatic, right? We've had over 10 years of nothing but growth in the market. Okay? As of August 22nd, it's the longest bull market in history. The market has never gone up this long, ever. Even in the 90s. Now, in the 90s, it went up farther, but it's never gone up longer. Okay? So the market has never gone up longer. Okay? How come we're not excited about this? So
what goes up comes down.
Exactly. Yeah. And I think there's a pretty strong belief out there. And here's what that the market's going to have to make a correction at some point. Okay? Typically, average markets are about 7 to 8 years. So we're now beyond 10 years. Okay, if you think about that, it's been 2008 since the last market crash. So the likelihood is there's going to be another market crash. Now, does that matter? It only matters if you're taking money from the market. And this is really, really, really important, guys. Think about 2008. Probably most people in here know somebody in 2008 who got crushed, who had to go back to work, who had to sell the house, who had to move in with the kids, or whatever those things were. Every single one of them made the same mistake. Every one of them was drawing income directly from the market. Okay? They were taking income from the market. And think about this. Anybody who's ever dealt with a broker, you've probably heard this 4% rule, where you put all your money at risk, some at high risk, and some at medium risk, and some at low risk, and you take out 4% of the value every single year. You should be able to have the income you need and want for the rest of your life, and the account's bigger than when you started. Okay, that's the story. That's not the fact. Okay, think about 2000. If you had retired on January 1st, 2000 with $1 million, and you just took out 4% of that, which would be about $40,000 a year, every year, how much money would you have today? I won't expect you to do the math. The reality is zero, because you would have run out of money in 2008, when the market crashed in 2008. You would have run completely out of money. And so that strategy wouldn't even work for 8 years. How is it going to carry you for the rest of your life? So, in fact, in my book, and you're welcome to take a copy, the publisher, I have free copies, so you're welcome to take a copy of them if you'd like. But in the book, I talk about the number one mistake that people make in retirement is taking income from a fluctuating account. Never, 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 if I can throw that in there, take income from a fluctuating account. What do I mean? Fluctuating account is like mutual funds. It's like your ETFs. It's anything out there that doesn't have a guaranteed principal. If you're taking income from that source, and the market goes down 50%, what's going to happen to your income? You had $500,000, now it drops to $200,000. Are you still going to take that $50,000 or $20,000 a year you're taking out of there? No, what happens is you either stop or you're simply going to run out of money. It took you how long to accumulate the assets for retirement? 30, 40 years? And to lose it in 1 or 2 years, you don't have another 30 or 40 years to recover it. Okay? I will show you how to do that too. That's in there as well. Okay? Now why don't you go ahead and pass that out now? Sure. Okay? Now, the trick with the market is, and let me make sure I'm really clear. I love the market. Long term, I think the market is awesome. Short term, I'm very afraid of it. I'm very scared. I started my career almost 25 years ago as a stockbroker. And every year, we would sit down and we would put what we thought the stock market was going to end at the end of the year. And it was fascinating to see how professionals in the industry, I mean, these were, I thought smart guys. I mean, we're talking about, so it's basically, you had 10,000 reps at Merrill Lynch who would all do this. And of these 10,000 reps, none of them would ever even came close. I mean, they were way too high, they were way too low, they just were. And these are people who are watching this every single day, have no idea. So they don't know what the market's doing. How in the world are you supposed to know what the market's doing based on what you're doing with everything else? Okay? Now, what I want to tell you is please don't be afraid of the market. If you're within 5 years of retirement, number one, you need to come in and see me. Because that's where you're really at risk. That's your highest risk portion. You're at greater risk within 5 years of retirement than you are after you've already retired. Think about that. If you're not looking at retirement in the next 5 years, I wouldn't worry too much about the market. It's going to go down, and it will come back up. But if you're sitting out there with all your retirement money in the market, and the market takes a crash, and you want to retire next year, it ain't going to happen. So don't make permanent plans. Okay? And like as I said, if you're in that scenario, we didn't even talk about that.
So question.
Please.
When you're talking about these fluctuating accounts, are you referring to 401ks, IRAs, mutual funds, stocks, bonds? What are you talking about specifically?
Yes. So specifically, anything that doesn't have a guaranteed principal. So think about your 401k. Most 401ks, 95% of what's there are all mutual funds. Those mutual funds do not have a guaranteed principal. You're going to lose money when the market goes down.
So if you are required at a certain age to take out, to withdraw from that account, you really don't have a choice. If the market goes down, you still have to withdraw money from it.
Okay? So let's talk about that one for a second. So let's assume that you're still working at your employer. Okay? You do not have to start taking what's called required minimum distributions until age 70. Okay? If you're still working at your employer at age 70, you are not required to take your RMDs. So you actually wouldn't have to as long as you were working. Okay? Now the other thing is, most employers now, and I haven't actually looked, I don't know what your plan looks like, but most employers have what's called an in-service distribution capability. Do you know if you guys have that?
We do.
You do? Okay. So basically what an in-service distribution basically says is you have the ability at some point, usually 59.5, is that what yours is? Okay. Usually once you cover at least 59.5, you have the ability to take the funds out of your 401k, move them into an IRA somewhere else. You pay no tax on that transaction. Your IRA could be at the bank if you want. It could be someplace where your principal guaranteed. So if you're concerned about what the market's doing and there's not an option at the 401k, if you're over 59.5, you can move it. If you're under 59.5, you may have more years and you can let it roll there. But there are ways that you would set it up. But I would definitely avoid, under any circumstance, drawing income directly from the market of any point. Again, it's not because I don't love the market, because I do. But it's the number one thing. Everybody you know who failed in 2008, everybody you ever heard, that's the mistake they all made. And guess what? Here we are 10 years later, and every brokerage house still gives the same instructions. Still say, put it all at risk and take out your percentage. Now they've lowered it to like 2%, but now you can't live on it. Now you got $1 million out there, you only take 20%. Well, that's silly. Okay? All right. And here's the other problem. So this is another thing I want you guys to be aware of. If you've got money in your 401ks, if you have money in a bond fund, I guarantee you, and I don't say that word lightly, I guarantee you, you will lose money in your bond fund this year. There's no place else I'm willing to guarantee you a loss this year except in your bond funds. And it's not the manager's fault. It is a mathematical calculation. If interest rates go up, you will lose money in a bond fund. It is math. So if nothing else, I'd say get out of bond funds. But regardless of where you are in your situation, as long as interest rates are rising, bond funds will lose money. Okay? All right. So let's talk about where do you get income. So I'm going to actually have you jump to the page that I just had them pass out to you. Okay? So what you're looking at right there, and can I have one up here too? So what you're looking at right here is it's an income plan. It's actually income plans that we use with with typical clients who come through. Okay?
I think it's on the slide. Jack, I think that's.
Yeah, but I don't want to jump over it.
Oh, okay.
I can jump there and come back. There we go. All right. So here's what you're looking at. Now, if you look at this thing right away, it's like, oh my gosh, this is a bunch of colors and numbers, and it's incredibly confusing. It's this crazy-looking chart. So let me point you out to a couple of things. So there's a couple of important things I want you to look at first. So first of all, if you look at the whole sheet, go to the far right over here, and this part where it says projected account balance. And this is actually an example of the clients that did a number of years ago. Their projected account balance when they came in, when you added up all the accounts, whether it was retirement accounts or savings accounts or checking accounts or whatever, they had about $1.1 million. Okay? That's what they started with. So if you look at this sheet, take a look at the big picture again, you'll notice there's these 4 different headings: dates and ages, income and taxes, sources of income, and bucket assets. Okay? So I'm going to talk you through each of these pieces. Let's look at dates and ages first. dates and ages. When this couple came in, they were 69 and 66. This plan runs out 33 years. The reason it runs 33 years, it takes the youngest spouse through their 99th year to age 100. Okay? So it's as simple as that. The plan runs to age 100. Okay? And then as you can see, this is go back from 2001, but still works the same. Okay? Questions on the first little title? We good there? Let's look at the next one. Income and taxes. Now, when this particular person, I should remember this client, when he came in, he had just retired from Boeing. And he said, here's the deal, guys. This is what I got. I need at least $8,000 a month to maintain my lifestyle. Do I have to go get another job? Or have I saved enough with my assets to be able to get at least $8,000 a month? The answer in his scenario, if you look at monthly spendable income, for him it was actually $93.45. So what that says is he could take out $9,345 every month of every year, grow that with inflation, and not run out of money until age 100. Is everybody clear on that so far? In fact, if you look over here at the far right, remember he started with 1.1 million. At the very bottom, how much is left in that column? You all see that? Okay. So in his scenario, the answer was, hey, you're retired. You're done. You don't have to go back to work unless you want to. How fun would that conversation be? Right? It's like, hey, you're done. Okay? All right, so let's go through and show you how this works. So monthly spendable income is $93.45. If you multiply that number by 12, you get $112,136, right? Because there's 12 months in a year. You have to deal with taxes, so you have to add back in this scenario, almost $20,000 that was paid out in taxes, and then you get the annual gross income of $133,924, $131,924. Everybody see that? So you go gross income minus taxes, gives you 112, divide that by 12, and you get the 9,346. Okay, any questions so far? All right, next piece. Where does the income come from? Now, this is where I was talking to you about where Social Security comes in, where any sources of income assets come in, because you need to make sure that you have sources of income that can grow with inflation, because I think we all realize things are going to be more expensive next year than they were today. Okay? So first of all, you got Social Security. In his scenario here, they were both going to receive Social Security. In fact, they both were receiving Social Security when they came in. So he's getting his amount, she's getting hers, and there used to be this ability for anybody in here born before 1954? Okay, nobody in here can do this. There used to be something called file and suspend and file and restrict, where you could draw off a spouse's income and then draw your own income and Social Security. Gone for everybody else. So this scenario was worked for them, where he could do this, she could do that. This would not be your scenario, okay? Because you can't do a file and suspend anymore. So they both had Social Security. He had his Boeing pension, which, if you're tracking that, pensions in Boeing no longer exist. So they've stopped funding pensions. There's basically no place has pensions anymore, unless you work for the state, county, work for the government somewhere. All right. Then, in this scenario, he was going to take $58,479 from his assets of $1.1 million. Do you see that? So his total assets are $1.1 million. The very first year, he's going to take $58,479. Is there anybody who doesn't see that piece? Okay, good. And then the next year, he's going to take $59,245. That's all coming from his assets, right? Okay. Now I want you to look at any questions before I go on to the blue column on any of these columns so far. Okay, hopefully it doesn't look as intimidating as it did 5 minutes ago. Okay, it's pretty straightforward. So, in fact, if you were to take this number, $58,479, plus the pension, plus both Social Securities, it's going to equal $131,924. You see how that works? Income from assets plus pension plus Social Security gives him a gross income of $131,924. We good? All right. Now, the blue column. The blue column is nothing more than a running total of how much money you drew from your assets, right? So the first year, you take $58,479. So in the blue column, what's the number? Okay, I just want to make sure everybody's following along. Everybody's looking down. It's like, I'm glad you're following. I just want to make sure you actually are. Okay, you're right. Okay, not a trick. The second year, you take 59,245. Now what's the total you've taken? 117. Okay, so you keep tracking that. What if you go all the way to the bottom? You take this all the way to the bottom of the sheet. How much money have you spent total out of your assets? Yeah, roughly $2 million. And how much did you start with? Roughly $1 million? So almost completely doubled the amount of income he took. So he started with $1 million, took $2 million in income. How in the world is that possible? Smoke and mirrors? All right, I'm going to show you how that works, okay? It's all math, though. The good news, there's two concepts here. One is called the cost of liquidity. The cost of liquidity, you guys all know it, even if you've never heard the term. It simply says the longer you leave money somewhere, the better rate you're going to get, right? A 5-year CD pays better than a 5-month CD, okay? The other one is compound interest, and we all have seen that one before. Okay, so now this next section is the secret to how you stay ahead of inflation. Because remember, this has an inflation factor built in, because he went from 93,000 all the way up to a little over $11,000 because expenses are going to continue to go up. I will tell you there is a secret. And I should tell you the secret now. Here's the secret. The secret is your expenses will not always increase. Right now, while you're working, every year inflation increases, your expenses increase. Okay? From the day you retire until you hit about 75 years old is what I call the go-go stage. That's the stage when you're traveling, when you're doing all the things you want to do. Once you hit 75, though you're still traveling, it's much more condensed, it's much more collected, it's not the same, and you are traveling from, say, 75, in fact, from 75 to 85, which is the slow-go crowd. If you've ever been on a cruise ship, that 75 to 85 crowd, they own that boat. They are all over that boat, right? Okay? Once you hit 85, you're not spending money on anything but food and medical. It's not uncommon for me to see clients who are spending less at 85 than they were spending at 65. Even though inflation has gone up, your spending has gone down. Think about anybody you know who's over 85 years old. Are they spending money on anything but food and medical? Okay? So there are some caveats here, but let me get back over here. But this is how you stay ahead of inflation. You'll notice you got buckets A, B, C, and D, and they're yellow. Yellow denotes something here. Yellow means principal guaranteed. If this was your plan and you looked at the yellow, that means all the money that's in this yellow section is in something where someone says, we guarantee the principal. Whether it's a bank or an insurance company or the federal government, somebody has to say, we guarantee the principal, right? The purple over there, bucket G, think of that as bucket growth. Bucket G, that's your risk. That's the money that's in the stock market. Okay? So let's run through just a quick scenario, and let's assume this is your situation. You just retired today, and you took, so if you look at the original, he started with $1.123 million, and then he put some of the money in bucket G, and some of the money in bucket C, and some of it in bucket B, and some of it in bucket A. So if you add up all those numbers, bucket A, B, C, and G, you're going to get $1.123 million. You see that? Okay, let's look at bucket A first. In bucket A, we needed to put, I can't quite see it. How much is in bucket A? 270,000 and some change. So that has to be someplace liquid, right? Because you have to pull money out every month to pay the light bill, to pay the water bill, to buy food. So it's in someplace liquid. So that particular account in this scenario is earning 1%. Okay? Funny, isn't how things come around? Remember, rates were down lower than that? Well, 1% now in a bank is not in a savings account, but we're seeing money market accounts that are paying better than 1%. So it's kind of come around. So in this case, we put 270,000 in bucket A, and that's the income we drew every month for the next 5 years. That's 55 or 58,000. At the end of 5 years, how much is left in bucket A? 0, right? You spent it all. How much have you spent, in fact? Can you find on the sheet how much you actually spent? Can you find that?
135.
Well, you started with 270. You spent at least 270, right? Because bucket A is totally gone.
Oh, yeah, 1 year.
Oh, yeah, I'm looking at the first 5 years. How much did you spend after 5 years? Well, you started bucket A with 270. So let me get you to look up here for just a second. You started with 270. Remember this blue column in the middle? That's a running total of how much you've actually spent? What's that number right there in the 5th year?
275.
275. That's how much money you spent. So it's the original 270 plus, some interest. So you spent 275,000 in the first 5 years. How much did you start with? A little over $1 million. Can we say you spent 27% of your total assets in the first 5 years? Would that make you nervous? Going into retirement, spending 27% in 1 year? Okay? This is the magic of math. I love this. Okay. So remember how much we started with, guys? 1.1 million. After 5 years, having spent 275,000, how much do you have left in that rows column on the right? $1,050,000 what? $1,058,000. You only dropped by 60,000. So even though you took 27% of your total assets, you only dropped by about 4%. How in the world is that possible? B&C. Okay, good. So you're exactly right. So you're always taking income from bucket A, right? So if you take income from the lowest earning account, it allows the higher earning accounts in bucket B, which is earning 3, bucket C, which is earning 4, and bucket G, which is earning 6, to compound. And the compounding on the account, so it didn't completely offset everything you took, it offset the bulk of it, didn't it? Okay? So that's what allows you, that's what's going to allow you over time to spend $2 million out of an asset that's only $1.1 million there. Let's look at bucket B. Let's do this again. So at bucket B, you put
17.
Thank you. 217,000 in bucket B, and you knew you didn't need it for how long? 5 years. Excellent. So money that you don't need for 5 years is going to get a better rate than money you need today. So in this scenario, it's showing that rate at 3%. So it grows at 3% for 5 years. Then it moves over. It becomes the new bucket A. Okay? That's what you spend for the next 5 years. How much money is left? Have you spent after 10 years?
532.
532? You know what it is? That's too fuzzy for me to see. I'll believe that. 532, that's about right. Okay, so you spent now 50% of your total assets. You think you were nervous at 27. Now you spent 50% of your total assets in the first 10 years. Okay? But how much is bucket G? How much of your assets actually declined? How much do you have left in bucket G?
480.
I'm sorry. I said bucket G, but I meant total assets. Thank you. How much do you have left in total assets? A little over $1 million. So now you've gone down about 8%, even though you spent 50. In fact, let's do one more, just because I think the reason I love this example is because after, I'm just going to jump this. You look at bucket C, you don't need it for 10 years, it grows for 10 years. How much money have you spent after 20 years in this version, in this plan, this person's plan?
A little over 1.
What's that?
A little over 1.
And how much did they start with? A little over 1. Basically spent 100% of your assets in the first 20 years of retirement. All gone. But how much money do they have left? 725. And then we just keep repeating it, okay? Now, there's one secret I'm going to tell you. Notice, how much income did they take from the market here? Never. But they have money growing in the market, right? Now I'm going to tell you another secret. And this is really, really important. So if you don't, if this doesn't make sense, make me do it again. Here it is. You'll notice bucket G here. We put an amount of money, and it grows for 10 years. Okay? At the end of 10 years, we move this money, which is, how much is in bucket D there?
407.
We move 407,000 out of bucket G into bucket D. And so there's not much left in bucket G, is there? That money grows for 10 years in bucket D, and then it becomes income for years 30 to 40. Right? Okay, now, here's what's important about that. When is the stock market going to crash? We don't know, right? What about when you retire? Let's assume you retired for 10 years. Is the market going to crash again in 2028, 2051, 2071? We don't know, right? But we do know the market's probably going to crash again. It's going to go up and it's going to come down. So here's how you protect yourself from a down market. Here's how you get growth in the market without the risk of the market. Because making money in the market is not about timing. Some people think I got to get in and out at the right time. That's impossible to get in and out at the right time, but it is possible to stay there long enough. Remember earlier I said the average market cycle, if the market goes down, it takes 5 to 7 years, right, to recover and get ahead? Well, let's assume that we have 10 years here, and we know the market is going to, let's say the market is going to crash right there. So we move the money over 10 years before we need it so that we've got that money safe. But what if the market crashed right there? We were just about to move the money out of the market and get it safe for 10 years, and the market crashed. No problem. We know we don't need the money for 10 years, right? So if you let it go 5 to 7 years for the market to recover, you're going to be fine and on track again before you need the money. Okay? That's how you protect yourself from a down market. Is you make sure that any place that you never take money directly from the market, that you can be in the market, but make sure it's not much money you don't need for at least 10 years. Okay? If you have something like that that's going to allow you to know where the income's coming from, build up for inflation, and make sure that you don't get crushed by a down market, your retirement is going to be awesome. You'll be great. You'll have the income you need and want for the rest of your life. Okay? So that just kind of gives you an idea. I think I probably went over, didn't I?
No.
Okay.
5 minutes.
Okay. So that's, I was going to go back and cover the other stuff, but I think I'm probably where we need to probably stop for now. I won't get back to that. But the trick that just to kind of think about is things are going to happen. Inflation's going to happen. The market's going to be volatile. You're going to have costs that you have to incur, and you have to make sure that regardless of what happens, that nest egg that you have the day you retire is all you're ever going to have, and you've got to protect that. That's what gives you the freedom to do what you always wanted to do for the rest of your life. Okay?
What's your recommendation? We have a 401k plan here, so people will put aside different amounts from 3% to 10% to 15%. Give us your overall recommendation for a strategy for that. For somebody that might be starting out at 22, or somebody that's 39, or
okay. So here's an interesting statistic. Most people don't start planning until 43 years old. Start looking towards retirement. Start contributing. So if you're contributing to a 401k at 22, you're miles ahead. In fact, if he's contributing at 22, he's going to crush all of you guys because he's got all of those years of accumulation. So what I tell people is I would max my 401k definitely up to the match if there's a match. If there's not a match, then I would just go right to the top. If you're under the age of 50 years old, the most you can have withheld is $18,500. If you're above that, you can go up to $24,500. And if you say, you know what, I can't afford to put that much money in, here's the kicker, okay? Every dollar that you put in a 401k only costs you about 68 cents, okay? Because you're getting a government loan, because you don't have to pay FICA on that money. You don't have to pay income taxes on that money. You don't have to pay anything else. So you think about that. If I put $10 in, it only costs me $6. Well, I thought I could put $6 in. Well, really, what that means is I can put 10. If I say, hey, I can afford to put $10 in, then set it up so you're putting in 13 or 14, okay? And the other thing that I would recommend is we have a society where we're trained to spend everything, okay? I have to, and had to years ago, I have to trick myself and I have to trick my wife. And that is I have everything pulled out for savings before she sees any money in the checking account, okay? And so what she sees is what's left to spend. So money that goes apart for different savings places and different everything else all comes out first. And so the other thing, if you say, hey, I can't do this right now, number one, when you get a raise, you know what? Increase your percentages. The other thing to do is, if you say, I can only afford 4% this year, okay, great. What if you move it up by 1% next year, and 1% next year, and continue to move it up every year until you get to a point where you're maxing it out? Okay? But I would say, you got in your 401ks, you need to be participating. It is the biggest government giveaway that you're going to get. Okay? Other questions, guys?
What about, we offer a Roth and a normal 401k. What's your recommendation there? So you can do it pre-tax or post-tax?
Boy, I love Roths. If the company's giving you a Roth, that's awesome. So here's the trick. So it depends on your tax bracket. So look at your income, and if your tax bracket is above, and I can't remember the new tax brackets off the top of my head, but if you're above a 24% tax bracket, I would do a regular 401k contribution. If you're under that number, if you're at 15, 10, 17, wherever you happen to be, if you're under that number, I would do a Roth. Okay? And this is great. If the company is offering you guys a Roth, that is awesome. Because what happens with a Roth is that even though you don't get a deduction, you do not get a tax deduction for a Roth. So if you put in $10, you're putting in $10. But all of the gain that you get on that account forever is tax-free. It's all tax-free. So it's one of those things, that's exactly what I would do for you. At 22 years old, I wouldn't even have to think twice. I'd be putting all of my contributions into a Roth. And so, would you rather pay tax on the seed or tax on the harvest? Think about that as a farmer. You're going to pay it based on weight. You want to pay it on the seed, or you want to pay it based on the harvest. A Roth is the last giveaway out there. If the company gives it, and a lot of them don't, basically what that means is no tax deduction up front, but it's tax-free forever, for the rest of your life, for the rest of your children's life, for the rest of your grandchildren's life. So that may change, but that's the way it is today.
Good question.
Yes?
When you, say you retire and you've got this Roth account, is that something that you would need to move into one of the buckets? In which case, do you lose that tax advantage?
A good question. So until the tax advantage will accumulate. You can move it out of your 401k into an individual Roth, and it always stays tax-free. So as long as it's growing, you're getting that benefit. As soon as you go to take it out, it's still tax-free. And there's no RMD. There's no requirement to take an RMD or a distribution on Roth accounts at age 70. Okay, so I see Kristen has already pulled that out. Guys, if you want to sit down, I'd love to take time and sit down with you individually and give you some guidance and direction if you want to take advantage of that. If you're good, that's great too. So let me know what we can do. Let's let Kristen know what she can do. She's scheduled me for stuff like that.